Hi, Catherine. How are you?
I'm good. How are you,
I'm
Luciana?
doing pretty good. Welcome, everyone, to WLJA Common Law Under God. I'm Luciana, and this is Catherine Hine. She is a resigned attorney from the state of Ohio who resigned after
From the
50
Ohio
years
Republic, please, not state of
from the
Ohio.
Ohio Republic.
Right,
I'm
right.
going to be in and out today, but we already have a couple guests here. We have Keith. Hi, Keith. How are you?
Hello.
And we have Gloria. Hi, Gloria. It's good to see you.
Hi, Luciana. Thank you. Good to see you too.
Yeah. Our topic today is human trafficking continues when we attempt to travel, a remedy. We always need to look for a remedy.
Right, right. Okay, well let's get started. I thought I would kind of summarize some things that I was finding about the the lack of authority among the so-called civil authorities that are actually usurpers, and what the Bible had to say about that. And then we might maybe Gloria could be thinking about a prayer for discernment, because I know that such verses as Romans 13 have been used to enslave, or mistranslations of Romans 13 have been used to enslave us and make us believe that we are enslaved to the usurpers. And I in my search, and I'm going to connect this back to our topic. Human trafficking continues when we attempt to travel. And of course, the human trafficking is part of the slavery. Travel, the right to travel has been admitted to be a fundamental right that we all have. And of course, we've had that right. God gave us two legs to travel with. Yeshua even told his disciples to, when they were traveling and spreading the word, to trade in their cloak for a sword, because it was, even then, it was not safe to be on the public roadways, and it's even more so now, more unsafe now. But going back to the Old Testament, the King James Version of Leviticus says, as to the authority of the so-called civil authorities, that means Roman civil law, which was never law. Leviticus 20:23 says, "And ye shall not walk in the manners of the nation which I cast out before you, for they committed all these things, and therefore I abhorred them." That's Leviticus 20:23. Then, of course, and I've quoted this before, and that would be Samuel 1 verse 8. When Samuel was dealing with the prospect of his ultimate demise and what would happen with the people after he was no longer their earthly leader. And there was much discussion about what would happen, and the people wanted to be like other nations, and they wanted to have a king. And they said, "Give us a king to lead us." This displeased Samuel, and he prayed to the Lord, and the Lord told him, "Listen to all that the people are saying to you, and it is not you they have rejected, but they have rejected me as their king, as they have done from the day I brought them up out of Egypt until this day, forsaking me and serving other gods, as they are doing to you. Now listen to them, but warn them solemnly, and let them know what the king who will reign over them will claim as his rights." To me, that does not sound like he's telling people to genuflect to black-robed wonders sitting on high benches. This is what he told Samuel to tell the people. This is what the king who will reign over you will claim as his rights. He will take your sons and make them serve with his chariots and horses, and they will run in front of his chariots. Some he will assign to be commanders of thousands and commanders of 50s, and others to plow his ground and reap his harvest, and still others to make weapons of war and equipment for his chariots. He will take your daughters to be perfumers and cooks and bakers. He will take the best of your fields and vineyards and olive groves and give them to his attendants. He will take a tenth of your grains and of your vintage and give it to his officials and attendants, your male and female servants, and the best of your cattle and donkeys. He will take for his own use. He will take a tenth of your flocks, and you yourselves will become his slaves. When that day comes, you will cry out for relief from the king you will have chosen, but the Lord will not answer you in that day. Now, jumping ahead to the New Testament, lest anybody be, misguided as to the degree of docility that Jesus, he preached constantly love, but he didn't preach a spirit, I don't believe, of enslavement. Looking at Luke 23:34, Luke 20, verses 9 through 19. And remember that Jesus spoke in parables because it was like in the present time, it was not safe to openly and unequivocally tell the truth, not to the multitudes. They had their censorship in that day as well. Jesus tells the parable of a man who sounds a lot like many of the patriot wannabes who don't understand that in our relationship with our public servants, so-called, we let them get away with murder and we continue to grovel as if we were their servants. The parable goes something like this. A landowner places his vineyards in the hand of tenant workers. The tenant workers were to lease the land, care for the crops, and reap the harvest with a set amount going to the landowner. This was sort of like a service contract, like you would have a lawn service, and we spoke about this, I think, last week. You pay the people who provide the service until one day you don't want their services anymore, and then the contract is at an end. It's a service contract. It's of limited duration so long as the parties agree. So one day, back to the parable of Jesus described in Luke 20. One day the landowner sent his servants to collect his share of the harvest, but the tenant workers beat the landowner's servants, drove them away, and some were killed. Finally, the owner, foolishly believing that surely they would respect his beloved only son, sent him. The workers, rejecting the son, killed him as well. Referring to the same story, Jesus said, as reported in Mark 12:9, "What then will the owner of the vineyard do?" And he answers his own question. He will come and kill those tenants and give the vineyard to others. Okay, then going on to Ephesians 5:11, of course, and it doesn't limit this to those who commit unfruitful works, who happen to have jobs in the government. Ephesians 5:11, have no fellowship with the unfruitful works of darkness. Doesn't sound to me like you go groveling to them. But this dishonorable and foolish practice continues. Then I would like to draw everyone's attention to the often perverted meaning of Romans 13:1. This is being used by the federal corporate cabal to lean on these clergy response teams who are operating 501c3 churches, so-called churches, which it was, let nobody be mistaken, we can operate churches without becoming 501c3 churches. A 501c3 is a type of federal corporation that gives you a special privilege, an exemption from the satanic cabal. That does not mean you're not still enslaved. It just gives you special privileges. And people think, who run churches think that they should do this, that they can't be a church if they're not a 501c3. Totally false doctrine. But it opens the door for the feds to tell the clergy response teams, that they insist that the churches form, to interpret Romans 13:1 in a way that, as far as I can determine, is a false translation from the original Greek. According to the King James Version, it says there is no power but of God. The powers that be are ordained of God. I believe that God provided some sort of plans, a plan A, a plan B, a plan C, a plan D. He's got a plan for whatever we decide, I believe. The New International Version of the Bible is even worse. There's a discussion of the word for word translation, which makes all the difference, though. And it says that we are not to obey the authorities of this world when they are anti-God. Does Romans 13:1 really say that all the governments are of God? And I think I sent you, I don't know if I was able to find this again, the link. I think the link may have disappeared, but the original Greek apparently was more closely translated as, let every soul be subject to the authorities on high. Well, who are the authorities on high? Are they Slow Joe and the District of Criminals? I don't think so. Let every soul be subject to the authorities on high, for it is not authority unless by God, and those who are authorities must be, maybe, and that could be translated, should be ordained by God. I don't believe that's the same thing. So I think we need to be really careful that we are not making false idols of the people, the agents of these so-called authorities, simply because of a mistranslation. Because when we read Romans 13, it's consistently with the rest of the Bible, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to me that they have this, that they are anointed by God at all. There's too much authority to the contrary. Anyway, I can bring in some other discussion about their version of law and what we should be doing when we exercise our right to travel. But I just wanted to make a quick prayer for discernment of the people so that they do not fall prey to this false doctrine and believe that being a doormat, being obsequious, is what our Heavenly Father wants for us. Anybody want to comment or make a prayer about that?
Well, I think if we go back to the parable
Mm-hmm.
and we look at that, a certain man that planted the vineyard, that's a shadow of God Almighty. And you'll find the vineyard in Isaiah 5. And he gave authority to those husbandmen who killed his servants and then killed his son. And it says, what do you think he'll do? He'll take that authority away from you and give it to others who will bring forth the fruits thereof.
Okay.
And that's what that parable means, that the authority that they have will be taken from them because they have killed his prophets, they've killed his apostles, they've killed his son, and so they
Mm-hmm.
have no more authority over his people. They have oppressed his people. If you read Ezekiel 34, it talks about the wicked shepherds who have fed themselves of God's flock and his people, but they don't feed the flock. And they treat them with cruelty and force, and that God is going to take that authority away from them and give
Mm-hmm.
it to someone else. And Yehoshua is the chief authority of heaven, in the kingdom of heaven.
Right.
And those that follow him are under his authority. They keep his commandments.
Right. And so we are to be guided by that. As I understand it. You want to weigh in on this, Keith? Keith, do you want to weigh in on this? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
You have an opinion on this? Especially like Romans 13 that seems to authorize. It's being perverted to mean that you're supposed to obey all of us because we're big shots and we have this authority, and it must be godly or we wouldn't have it. So you've got to obey.
No.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's really taking the authority that God has really given, and man is trying to take that for himself. I mean, that's the interpretation that I'm seeing.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes any sense.
Yeah. Well, I mean, here we are. I mean, we're in the world, but trying to not be of the world.
Right.
And we need to, and we know that our ultimate authority, comes from on high. And on high does not mean, the heads of corporations.
Exactly.
So we just have to use our best discernment and with careful reading of scripture to understand in specific instances what that means for us to do. And I wanted to get into specifically just some basic stuff basic rights that, are God-given just by the nature of how he created our bodies, the right to travel. And that's not even a foregone conclusion anymore that we have that. I mean, if all you have to do is look online here, there, and everywhere. I urge people to look at Audit the Audit, which has a little cottage industry of posting video from all around the country of people trying to exercise their God-given right to travel on the public roadways, and they're getting detained, to put it mildly, by cabal agents, and it's hardly even, is questionable. No matter what you do, might they kill you? If they don't like your answers to questions, should you answer their questions? Is there a right or a wrong way to do this, to deal with that? Does it help if you've loaded yourself up with registered this and license for that and all that stuff? And I'm looking at these videos, one after another, after another, after another, and it seems like, to me, that you can hardly make yourself safer by jumping through all their hoops, by obeying. And they have a lot of hoops for you to jump through. So many.
It sounds like a lot of stipulations that go with it.
Yes, a lot of
you add one, and then they'll add another and say, well, you got to do this, this, and this, and then we're going to add this one on to tomorrow, and you're supposed to follow that stipulation, or whatever they're going to, impose.
I was looking at one of the videos and compared it to the one before, where the traveler was trying to impress the cabal actors with the degree of his obedience. He was trying to say, look, I've got this, I've got this, I've got this, I've got this, I jumped through this hoop and that hoop. And the more he did, the more he tried to show them how obedient he was, the more it opened the door for them to say, yeah, but you don't have this, and you don't have that, and we don't like this, and we think that you sound a little angry. Do you think you might need a mental health evaluation? Do you think blah, 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 blah? And then the more questions that they asked, the more panicky this particular traveler became. And the more questions they asked, the more answers that the traveler tried to provide. The more answers he provided, the more ammunition he was giving to the questioners. And I found that this particular traveler, compared to another traveler, who every time he was asked a question, he would say, he would ask, am I required to answer that? And which sort of put the questioner in a position of realizing that no, he doesn't. This cabal agent he did know that he couldn't force people to answer questions. Most of the cabal agents do seem to understand Miranda versus Arizona, that if they haven't read Miranda rights, they can't start questioning people and then they use their answers to incriminate them in some way. Although they do it anyway. They try it. But they have to get spontaneous questions. They have to be able to say, oh, he just blurted this out. They can't use the rubber hose against you anymore, or not provably so. But the more they get you to answer questions, of course, the more ammunition that you give them, and then that opens the door for more stuff. And if you think that you're not going to lose your life, or you're not going to lose your freedom by cooperating, by answering all their questions, that's not the case. In the last couple of years, I was advocating for a woman who, when she was stopped for allegedly speeding, endangering no one, she panicked, and she conveyed that panic, I think, to the cabal agents, and that seemed to feed their venom. And at a certain point, they started taking their, I don't know what kind of tool it was, and they started bashing out her windshield. And then she really panicked, and she thought they were going to kill her, and started to drive off. And she's still locked up to this day. And this happened in 2017. Yeah. She was never even charged with any traffic offense. But of course, the enslavement tactics continued beyond the roadway with her own bar agent attorney, who prevailed on her to plead not guilty by reason of insanity. And then she was really stuck then, and she's been stuck ever since. That's one of the worst situations. It may not be the worst, but some people just lose their lives right there on the spot in the roadway.
Isn't that a presumption? Well,
is that what?
A presumption too on their part?
A presumption of guilt? A presumption of...
Well, either or.
Yeah, well, I saw one video where the man was saying, basically, I'm not going to answer your questions. Do I have to answer your questions? You say, are you going to hurt me if I don't answer your questions? And they were, then they started a different tactic. You sound angry. Are you angry? You want to tell us why you're angry? And he knew that trick, so he didn't fall for that. He didn't answer the question. He kept answering their questions with, am I required to answer that? Am I required? Because he knew that they could not say, yes, you have to answer that or we'll hurt you. They can't do that. And so he just continued that to a point. They worked on him pretty good. But over time, he was a broken record, which is a great assertiveness technique. It keeps you in balance between being aggressive on one end or being passive on the other end. And he just kept saying, am I required to answer that? Am I required to answer that? And eventually they stopped. But there might have been better ways to handle that. I don't know, but he did a pretty good job. And he got away, with his life and his health, and he didn't even get a ticket. But
what did he get pulled over for?
He wasn't even pulled over. He was in a private shopping plaza waiting for his food, and he had parked in a place where, I don't know, there was a loading zone or whatever it was. The cops were out of their cabal jurisdiction, according to their own rules anyway, but they decided they were going to get lucky that day. And because, when they bring in somebody, it's money for the corporation. It's fines, it's court registry investment system funds. And at some point, the traveler just started asking them questions, which is a good position to be in. And that is, what will it take for you to let me be on my way? And he became a broken record about that. What will it take for you to let me be on my way? And, they tried you sound angry to me, kind of a tactic, but he continued, he remained consistent with, am I required to answer that? And he never really did. I think at one point he did answer one question, but then he reverted to his broken record position, which worked well for him. Y'all can see this on Audit the Audit. I mean, that and many other roadway incidents. And Yeah. But one of the first things, I mean, the people that are generally featured on these videos have been practicing a while, and they've got kind of nerves of steel. That's not everybody by any means. And I have to think too, wouldn't it have been easier? Wouldn't they have had more confidence in their ability to stand their ground if they had been carrying with them a common law court order that named, these people's bosses, and finding liability, generally in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, or sometimes in the millions of dollars, for these kinds of crimes, common law crimes that are being committed. Extortion is the big one that is committed on a routine basis on the public roadways by these private corporate cabal members. And so when they do that, when they had, if we had, and I don't know anybody who's ever done this, but we're doing that in the Ohio Circuit Court of Record. We're inviting people to join us. Anybody who wants to be a claimant. I mean, you can still get a lot of the benefits of the judgment we will get against these people, and because we'll get it by default, the way we get a lot of our judgments, because these people never have a response. And there's a number of them, and they work for different parts of the cabal, and I could go through some of that with you all. It's not just the sheriff's department in whatever county you're traveling in, which is also a corporation. It's not just State of Ohio, the corporation, although it's subsidiaries of State of Ohio. There's all kinds of other corporations that are profiting from our traveling and and their ability to interfere with that and extort funds to stop the interference. So, and I can go through what those are. I don't know, I can get into, the horrors of the problem, the vastness of it, and it's growing. Or I can get into more of the solution. I have the claim sketched out. All I need is a few claimants who want to have, a judgment they can carry with them, so they don't have to rely on their own nerves of steel when the time comes to be able to point to, look, I got this judgment here, and it names your boss, and it says that your boss and his agents, that would be you, are liable to me, if you're one of the claimants, if you could be able to say that, or to these other people. Have y'all been paying this judgment? Maybe the best thing for you to do before you get involved further in being a liable party, because the judgment does say that the agents and the principals of the named respondents are equally liable, because you can't just hide behind that badge. You can't just say, I'm only doing my job, because if that job means you're aiding and abetting in common law crimes like extortion against people like me, you're going to be liable. You are liable already. I'm surprised you haven't already been informed about this judgment by your superiors. What are they keeping from you? I don't know. Maybe they're not going to worry about that. Maybe they are. But I would rather have that with me than nothing at all. Now, some people, they keep, these fat notebooks with, their case law, and they get into these long drawn out arguments with the cabal agents. And sometimes the cabal agents will refuse to even acknowledge that they are subject to decisions from their United States Supreme Court, so-called, which say actually that they have no duty to protect or serve. So, and I can give y'all the U.S. Supreme Court, it's the Castle Rock versus Gonzalez decision from their United States Supreme Court. And there's another case I brought up before where the court, their so-called court, decided, no, they don't have any duty to protect or serve. Well, then why are they on the roadway? And I think a lot of people who want to defend the blue need to know that the blue aren't there to protect you. They have no duty to protect you. So what are they there for? They're there to serve the purposes of their employer, the private for-profit corporation. So what is that purpose? What is the purpose of every corporation? Revenue generation. That's what they're there for, not to protect or serve anybody. So, go into it understanding that they don't have any authority other than the authority, of a highway robber. They're armed. Yeah, I get it. They're armed. And, if they're determined that they're willing to be characterized as what they are, highway robbers and extortionists, repeat offenders too, and that they are armed and dangerous, then, maybe there's some of them who don't want to be labeled in their communities as that. Maybe they don't care. I don't know. But I would rather, call things what they are, call things by their right names, and I'm actually seeing a few people who are on these videos who just have enough strength within themselves who are bringing this kind of stuff up, and they're speaking to the cops. Usually it's not the cop that pulled them over, it's the supervisor. It's a good idea to bring in their supervisor if you get a runaround from the cop, or the cop becomes aggressive. And they're able to, one guy said, can I just talk to you man to man? Not as you're the officer, you have this title, and I'm just the citizen. I'm just the driver, the operator of the motor vehicle, which, don't let them lead you into calling your private conveyance a motor vehicle. It doesn't meet their definition. You're not in commerce. So if you can do that, and this guy did, he was able to speak really frankly to this man, and someone sent me this video, and it's been hidden pretty well online. But the supervisor was like, when the traveler was telling him about common law, I'd like to learn a little bit more about this. Like, how about our rights to not receive medical interventions that we don't want? And I think that's a big concern that these agents do have who are working for these cabal so-called police departments. And they might want to also question whether their retirement plans are really going to be honored when the time comes to, gee, has your supervisor ever lied to you before? You think they might lie to you again? And I would suggest that people who have these skills, who have worked for the cabal and are coming to their senses, yes, it's going to be a rough transition. It's going to be a rough transition for all of us into parallel economies. But they would do well to come out of Babylon and start helping the people to find their own dignity and their own right to self-defense, and start training people maybe who want to organize neighborhood watches in their own area so they can defend their homes and their families and their communities. They have the skills, and I have to think God wants them to use those skills for a godly purpose. Okay, what you got for us here, Keith?
Lawfully here, and I am lawfully asking for your identification. My name is who you are and what you are doing.
The law enforcement officer asks you to identify yourself. You have to identify yourself.
Welcome back to the Lackluster channel. Today's story is an update from a video I posted in January of an incident that occurred in Middleport, Ohio back in October of 2021. At around 7:30 in the evening, William was walking home. His course took him near the Middleport police station, and shortly after passing the department's property, Officer Jeff Provins stopped William's travels.
Okay, go ahead and show me some ID.
Am I being detained?
I'm going to identify you
For what crime?
because I had a complaint.
Suspicion of what? What crime?
I didn't say there was a suspicion of a crime.
Well, I don't have to ID unless you suspect me
You
of
need
a
to
crime.
identify yourself to me.
Well, the law is if you suspect me of a crime.
I am lawfully here, and I am lawfully asking for your identification because I had a call that you were in and around a bunch of cars over here. So I need to know who you are and what you were doing.
I wasn't doing anything. I don't know who called.
It doesn't matter who called. I have a complaint, and I'm following up on my complaint. Now, I'm asking you nicely for your identification. If you don't want to give me your identification, then you can come with me, and I can hold you until you identify yourself.
Well, every minute that you hold me, you're going to be held accountable, and you'll violate my civil rights. Am I being detained?
At this time, you are, if you're failing to identify yourself.
Okay, well, at this time, I'm going to invoke my Fifth Amendment right to remain silent.
Alrighty. Turn around, place your hands behind your back.
Yes, sir.
And just like that, William is placed under arrest and issued a summons that charged him with failure to comply with the order or signal of a police officer. RC 2921.331 requires that the order is necessary to direct, control, or regulate traffic. But William wasn't driving. William was on foot. Officer Provin included a charge for contempt, but based on Middleport Ordinance 161.03, the offense must have been committed before the mayor, and the mayor wasn't present. Patrolman Provins alleged that he had received a call from his dispatcher that William was snooping around the vehicles in the department's parking lot. Shortly after, William hired Scott Petroff to represent him in the matter, and when he reached out to Mr. Rick Hedges, the city solicitor, he was told that the chief stands behind his officers. After the incident, the village police department's Facebook team blocked William from commenting, and when William's attorney requested that they unblock him, they responded by deleting the entire page, and the village proceeded to prosecute William. William's lawyer requested discovery 3 times for this case, but was never offered any evidence, though the department has video cameras in their parking lot that would prove whether William even walked through the lot. The department would later say that they had deleted the footage after 2 weeks, failing to preserve evidence that would likely prove William's innocence. Months later, the case was moved to Meigs County, and after numerous court appearances and having to retain counsel, the prosecutor finally dropped the charges. But none of the above surprises me, as I have personally emailed Mr. Hedges for records and have yet to hear back from him. In fact, it was his lack of response that told me that they were hiding something, so I sent records requests to several other employees within the village and county, and was finally given a copy of a settlement agreement between William and the village. The fun part is here, where it says that the agreement will speak for itself if necessitated to be turned over by means of records request. But how can it speak for anything when they redacted all of the settlement agreements? They removed almost everything except that there was a settlement. But by reading through some of the fine print, we can determine that there was a monetary payment made to William. that the village of Middleport has agreed to provide additional training to its officers and revise its police manual and procedure manual to include a provision requiring the village to preserve video surveillance evidence of criminal or suspicious activity that occurs on village property until the village makes a determination that no criminal charges will be initiated. Seems like standard stuff that should have been there in the first place. In the end, Patrolman Proven and every other officer involved, including the chief, demonstrated a complete lack of understanding regarding both constitutional restrictions on their authority and the offense they were claiming to investigate. And most of these men have been in law enforcement for their entire adult life and are just now learning the most basic concepts of freedom, while you, the taxpayer, are the ones who pay for their authoritarian mistakes. William's channel will be linked below, so be sure to let him know that I sent you. And if you need a top-notch civil rights lawyer in Ohio, I will be linking Mr. Petrov's information in the description.
Yeah. Oh, how many years did that take for those nonsense charges to get dismissed? And how many tens of thousands of dollars did he have to pay to the attorney? This could have been resolved in a 3-notice process in a matter of probably a couple months. But this is what happens when you play on their turf. You know, they're gonna run you through, make you jump through their hoops, and making all kinds of assumptions. I mean, the whole story is full of assumptions that are false. That these people had some kind of authority to investigate harm that might happen in their imaginations. Because why? I mean, they have no duty to protect anybody. So what are they doing detaining people who have harmed nobody, but these corporate agents claim to believe that they might hurt somebody, anybody might do something, this is in the danger zone of pre-crime. We're going to stop you and we're going to punish you because you might commit a crime in the future. If you were just dead, we wouldn't have to worry about the crimes in the future that you might commit. It's all for the greater good, right? This is the insanity that we get into when we start down that road of assuming that they have legitimacy, and we play on their turf, the turf of Satan, the turf of filthy Roman civil law, that they are superimposing on what was once, in the early days of the Republic, God's law, which was, if you need an endorsement of God from Satan, it came in 1997, Public Law 83, 207, I think, that it was during Reagan's administration. That was the year of God. Yeah, we're going to have a year of God, during Reagan's administration, because it appealed to the silent majority that were a good voting bloc for him. But, the Word of God has been something that godly people have paid attention to since the beginning of the Republic. And part of that involved, the cabal's admissions that that the people were the source of all law. Okay, yeah, 97, 280. Boy, I botched that.
Yeah,
Thank
wasn't
you.
it? Was 82, 83?
Yeah, I know it was during Reagan, so yeah. Yeah, God needed a cheering section, and so that happened. And now, of course, the political winds have changed and Christians are under severe attack. But once these facts have been admitted, they can't really be unadmitted. They're on the record, and yeah. One of the things that comes up when cabal agents make contact with one of the people is that they want identification. And I think I sent you the Ohio Revised Code, their cabal statute, about the duty to self-identify. Did you find that, Keith? I think it's ORC section 2921.29. We don't cite their statutes and codes because they're authority. They are not authority. But they are evidence of what they will admit to. And this defines what they're limited in requiring. And if you go through the videos, their agents consistently get this wrong. If you are not the focus of a criminal investigation, if there's no probable cause to believe that you harmed somebody or you endangered someone, then there's no duty to disclose information. I would suggest there's no duty to disclose information to these people anyway, since they aren't investigative agents. What would make us think that they have a duty to investigate if they have no duty to protect? What would they be investigating? How deep your pockets are? That's about all I can see that they would be investigating. Let me go back to the screen. There you go.
I mean, if it's one feed, it'll be another.
Now, these statutes clearly do not apply to us, but because we are not persons, we do not meet the definition in their codes and statutes of being persons. And, as I've mentioned before, their statutes and codes do not deal with men and women, because men and women are creations of God, and they know they don't have any authority over God's creation, so they don't use those terms in their statutes and codes. So they had to have another term that would confuse us into thinking, oh, person, that would be me. No, it would not be you, unless you agree that you're going to act as a person. But if you don't agree to act as one, then there are statutes and codes that apply to persons don't apply to you. Now, if they did, you would have to be the subject of an investigation. There would have to be probable cause, and they never have the probable cause. Where's the affidavit or testimony from a man or woman that says I harmed them or I endangered them? And looking around or checking somebody's license plate, that's not harming anybody. I've seen a lot of folks detained because they were doing their own little investigation. They were checking out license plates, which is their right. It's in plain view. Cabal agents are always telling us, well, if it's in plain view, even if we have to stick our necks into your private conveyance and shine a flashlight into your back seat, that's in plain view, and so if we think it's something that could be dangerous, we can do all kinds of bad things to you then. Well, then, aren't we all created equal in America? So if you can do it to me, can't I do it to you? I think so. anyway. They have no business being on the roadways investigating crime that they have no duty to protect anybody from. What would they be investigating it for? To take it to the newspapers? Anyway, let me. Does anybody want to comment while I'm looking for? I'm looking for the set of claims, and I want to just kind of review those quickly. That I would like this broadcast to invite people to join us in. And even if you can't join us in, and this would be for Ohio people, because we plan on bringing this and getting an Ohio common law judgment. But even if you're not a claimant, if you're an Ohio man or woman and you travel sometimes, once we get our judgment, you may want to carry a certified copy of that judgment around with you. It's going to be available on our website, which again is www.occr2021.com, and that would be on the docket section. It's not there yet because we have not started we don't have a claimant willing to start the 3-notice process. I would like to see 3 or 4 Ohio claimants willing to jump in, and if they have a claim for having been harmed by members of the cabal while they were peaceably traveling on the roadways. I know some of our people already have been through this in connection with other crimes that the cabal members were perpetrating against them. This is, it's not just the armed agents that pose a threat, because it's an intricate kind of a web between the cabal agents that you see, the armed men in costumes sporting shiny badges that are also, they're agents of corporations that are subsidiaries of other corporations like Bureau of Motor Vehicles. And let me find that. I'll pull that up. Well, it's not what I was looking for. But one of the other corporations that aid, the agents of this corporation aid and abet the members of the Department of Public Safety Corporation, the various sheriff's departments of the different counties, those subsidiary corporations, various village and township and city police department agents. They're all interconnected corporately. And if you have not registered your private conveyance with them, they will translate that into being some sort of an offense. Of course, when you register, you're saying, I'm just a slave and I can't own anything myself. I have to have Big Brother, the corporation, own my private conveyance, my car, my automobile, or my truck that I use not in commerce. And so then they've got their hooks in you a little bit that way. You might think you're protecting yourself by registering your property. But once you do that, once you register it, it's not your property anymore. It may not have been your property to begin with if you bought it from a dealer. Okay, I think I found it. Yeah. All right, I can go through quickly. Yeah, I think we're going to call it something like notice of absence of authority to interfere with right to travel, notice of liability for maintenance of public and private nuisances, notice of potential liability for assaults, batteries, and kidnaps, extortion, theft, intentional infliction of mental distress, and infringement on the right to contract, denials of consent, fee schedule, affidavit offered to resolve all matters in controversy, and exhibit. And so here are the people that, and remember, these corporations can do nothing themselves. They're corporations, they're just mental constructs. They don't even actually exist. They can't own anything, although some people would want to argue about that. But they, how can, if it's fictitious, can Tinkerbell own pixie dust? Probably not. That wouldn't mean much. And that's the bill of goods they're trying to sell us. They're a corporation. A corporation owns it. Okay. But you've already admitted the corporation doesn't exist. So here are the people we're naming. Michael DeWine, of course, who's known by 3 or 4 other names, because he has corporate authority over all of these other actors who are connected to him corporately. David Yost, the Attorney General, so-called, of the state of Ohio's corporation. And I've already looked up their Dun & Bradstreet numbers. Sharon Kennedy, who I think is the current so-called Chief Justice of the so-called Supreme Court of Ohio, the corporation. Andy Wilson, head of Ohio Department of Public Safety, ODPS. Jack Marchbanks, all these are corporations. Head of Ohio Department of Transportation. And they've got a Dun & Bradstreet number 2, like the other ones did. Some have more than one Dun & Bradstreet number because they're affiliated with more than one corporation. Then there's Charles Jones, who's an agent or contractor of Ohio Department of Public Safety, one of the divisions known as Ohio State Highway Patrol. I guess Ohio State Highway Patrol isn't really big enough to be its own corporation, so it's just a division of the corporation known as Ohio Department of Public Safety. Parts of your government should not be called divisions, but parts of a corporation are. Then there's Charles Norman, who is agent or contractor of Ohio Bureau of Motor Vehicles, which is another division of Ohio Department of Public Safety. And then we get into the interesting part of what happens to you if you're injured on the roadway while you're traveling. And who's the first ones? What agents are the first ones to see about you? Remember, these are people who have no duty to protect you whatsoever, but they will be the first responders. They're responding, all right, and this is who they will be answerable to. The uniform badge wearing folks that we've been talking about answer to people like, or are ultimately accountable, at least profit-wise, to people like Jim Will, who is a contractor or employee of Life Bank, which has its own Dun & Bradstreet number and is in charge of organ donation, because we need to really, if there's a traffic mishap and it might be life-threatening, then we want to make sure that every T is crossed and every I is dotted when the corporate agents make sure that you get life flighted or otherwise sent to the local corporate hospital. And of course, the agents of BMV have already paved the way for that by making sure that you signed, as many do, an organ donation consent form. Okay, sounds all warm and fuzzy until you understand the hoax behind organ donation, which we'll get into. But if you have ever signed one of these documents agreeing to have your organs extracted upon your brain death, not real death, upon your brain death, according to some physician, then you are giving, it's right there on your driver's license, you signed that, yeah, it's okay to extract my eyes and whatever tissue you need and give it to someone else. If you later decide you're not going to be an organ donator, the next time you renew your license with the corporate state of Ohio, they still have your previous signature on agreeing to be an organ donor, and they can use that. If you consented once, hey, they got it. They got it. Even if later, they might not be able to find the subsequent licenses that show that you didn't sign. As long as they have something that says you did sign in an agreement, they're golden. So then we've got other people who work for Lifeline of Ohio, Life Center Organ Donor Network, and that Lifeline is in Columbus, Life Center Organ Donor Network in Cincinnati, Life Connection of Dayton, Life Connection of Toledo and Maumee, Ohio. And there might be one or two other entities. But, and these aren't everybody. There's also some corporations that are experimenting on low-flying aircraft to monitor speed, and then there's the corporations that are marketing self-driving vehicles that may also endanger you while you're traveling, and they have their own potential liabilities and their own people who are running those corporations. So these notices, like our other notices, can be served on the people involved, and they'll have their due process opportunities to rebut any of the allegations that claim that you're endangering people. And if we're wrong, tell us. Explain to us how we're wrong. We'll see if they do. And if they don't, like their fellow agents never do, then we'll get judgment against them, or the claimants will get judgment against them, and they will have something that they can take with them when they travel to show to the private code enforcers, the private corporate code enforcers in their uniforms and their shiny badges, who are the first ones that we see on the roadway, who are kind of the public face of these other corporations that stand behind them. So that in a nutshell is, what we've done. I haven't gotten into the Roger Hilligus case, but I wanted to mention that. But I wanted to get into, the hazards of travel on the roadways, not just of Ohio, but any place, because Roger Hilligus's people are asking for the physical presence of his supporters in Reno, Nevada. We'll get into that in a bit, but I wanted to. I've talked so much. I wanted to leave it open to comments by Keith or Gloria or anybody else who calls in. But I don't know. I mean, I'm not saying other people commenting. You know, if you look at our documents, at our website and our previous videos, you'll see that we've done a lot of work, a lot of paperwork, and that's a big turnoff for a lot of people. People who are looking to be entertained, I don't think this is where you want to be. For those who want real solutions, however, I think it is. And, when a lot of us started this, there was nobody to help us. We kind of invented this. We didn't invent this ourselves, but we extrapolated from the words of Scripture in formulating a lawful Bible-based solution, and it seems to be working for us, particularly considering as few people as we really have, but it's growing, and there's others in other states who may also want to form a common law court, and some have already done that, and we're happy to help you in those efforts as well. But our primary focus is on the people of Ohio. That keeps us plenty busy. I'll shut up now in case anybody wants to get a word in.
Well, I don't know anything about the laws of this world. My focus is on God's word.
Mm-hmm.
That's the law that I know.
Well, what they're doing isn't law. It's just these are just criminal business operations. But I think God has something to say about business operations that harm living people.
Well, he requires righteousness and equity in judgment, and don't oppress anyone. His laws are very simple. You do not oppress anyone. And these laws sound very oppressive. The laws of the states and the corporations are oppressive.
Yep.
And he requires the ruler of his people to have his word at his side at all times and to read it every day so that he knows how to rule over his people. And that's not being done. It hasn't been done since King David, I think.
Well, and the point is, these really were never our rulers. They usurped their positions. They're just thieves. They're pretending to be something that they're not. They've never been upfront, and they are not upfront to this day about the corporate positions that they hold. And when they hold a corporate position, they're saying, yes, we can harm people, not be liable for it, and have only a profit motive. But we're going to pretend that we're your representatives and we have your interests at heart. I mean, it's total lies. They totally usurped what they say that they are. They're not really our rulers. They never were.
Well, that's true in both the church and the state.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
They
it
take
is.
authority upon themselves, but their authority does not come from God because they don't keep his instructions. And God says, if you follow my instructions, it will go well with you. But the evidence that you don't is that it's not going well with you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So now they're coming out with this digital ID. I'm sure you know about that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that is a means to restrict travel.
Mm-hmm.
You won't be able to travel if you don't have a digital ID?
Well, I think we're inventive enough that we can find means of bartering or purchasing goods and services from one another without a digital ID. We're smart people. I think we can figure out an alternative. By the grace of God, we can do that. I mean, they did that, back in ancient times, didn't they? They had shekels. They had, other things that they used as symbols, as money in the sense of a means of exchange, not as a way of holding value. And that served their purposes, and something similar could serve the purpose today. We have to think outside the box. God gave us brains to do that with.
There's also one thing I'd mention too. When they ask if you want to, get a driver's license or renew it, they always ask for what your status of your voter registration is, because that goes hand in hand with that system.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. When you register to vote, you sign, you give them your very valuable signature, very powerful thing, your signature. And you agree to be one of their U.S. corporate slaves. And that you will vote for their corporate officers, and you will support the illusion that they are your authority, even though they are not. So that's why on our court, everybody has rescinded their voter registration. We don't participate in that nonsense. Those votes are not for people in government. Those votes are for officers in their evil corporations. That's all it is. And that's not for us to administer. It's not for godly people to administer a satanic legal fiction corporation by voting, by paying taxes, or otherwise. And there are safe ways of extracting ourselves from that. And there are unsafe ways of doing it. But, we've been working at this for a while, and can help people extract themselves safely. I would say that pretty much nobody who's been on our court so far, has been harmed because of anything they did to join our court or to engage in process with our court. If it didn't involve engaging with the enemy, generally speaking, people don't get in trouble. And I'm not saying it's not impossible. We can all become crime victims, however godly we are. I mean, we know that.
Yeah, and I think the more distant we can be, the better off we're going to be. And staying on our turf versus theirs.
Mm-hmm. When we venture onto their turf and we purport to administer their nonsense, we're much more vulnerable than when we stay on our own turf. And you see that over and over. You see the J6ers that ventured forth into the belly of the beast, into the district of criminals with no plan. And did they deserve what happened to them? No way. My people perished for lack of knowledge. They did not know. They thought that they did not know their enemy. They did not know themselves. And they had assumed
Well,
that the enemy cared about them.
he said, your enemies will be found to be liars in you.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch all that.
Yeah, say that again.
It says, your enemies will be found to be liars unto you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And yet we find people believing them anyway because they just want to believe them.
Right.
And that's not a basis for anything, for safe decisions. People want desperately to believe in something, and they're believing in the evil ones instead of believing in God.
Yeah, false hope.
Now, feel free to jump in. I wanted to get into and kind of close out with this announcement about the Roger Hillegas matter. I think we've referred to it before, but there's another common law court that assembled in the original Texas Republic. And Roger Hillegas is a Texas domiciliary. And he was at the time that he was kidnapped by agents of state of Nevada, where he's being held in a dungeon, basically, and tortured to death. He has been held since October of 2022 for the crime, or the corporate offense, I should say, of kidnapping his mother from a nursing home where she was being tortured. And there you go. Thank you, Keith. This is I think this is the seal, and maybe it contains some information about the Texas court's website. And Texas is kind of its own special republic. And remember, all of the states at one time, and even to this day, are often referred to as nations, sovereign nations that are foreign to one another. But early on, back at the Revolution, they signed they had some kind of agreement to the Articles of Confederation to form a loose confederation, but they didn't give up their state sovereignty. In any case, Roger Hillegas, with help from people in the Texas Republic, went through the same kind of 3-notice process. There you go. There it is right there. Cartwright versus Breslow. That's the case. He couldn't bring it in his own name because he's locked up in a dungeon. But Donna Cartwright has power of attorney for him and has been in contact with him, as have I, and helped him prepare the notices of liability that sets forth all the common law crimes and some corporate offenses that a group of about 25 people, there's their summons, and it gives a link to the website. And if we can't get it posted in a usable form here, I'll post it in the comments tomorrow whenever we get this posted. Yeah, there's the people. Here's the perpetrators. Now, that's not all of them. And remember, like in all of these cases, service on agent is service on principal, and vice versa. So the first named respondent is this fellow by the name of Barry Breslow, and he's the black-robed agent that is keeping Roger locked up. And it seems that Roger probably does not have a whole lot of time left on this earth. he's getting weaker and weaker. When they first kidnapped him on his way back to Texas, to his Texas home in October 2022, he was not in a wheelchair, but he is to this, today. And he's very weak. And they barely give him enough to survive. And, he's not getting medical attention. The good part is that the people of Texas have now signed a judgment. And I don't believe that judgment, the judgment was signed July 31st. It is in the process of being posted on the website for all to see. Rogers supporters ask that people come and bear witness to the formal serving of that judgment on the admitted perpetrators in Reno. There's 2 facilities there where they torture him. One is, and I can give the addresses. The so-called courthouse. Well, it is the public courthouse, but it's being usurped by the corporate state of Texas. And anyway, state of Texas is running an operation that calls itself a court, but it's really a corporate tribunal. And I'll find it in a minute. You had it up there a minute ago. Here, I'll find it. It's on the summons. No, that's the address of the court, but of the Texas court. But the tribunal in Nevada is in Reno, Nevada, and it calls itself the 2nd Judicial District Court, and I think it's also known by other names. Washoe, that's Washoe County Courthouse, also known as the Reno Justice Court, again, or the 2nd Judicial District Court. People are assembling at 10 a.m. Nevada time on Monday, August 8th at 75 Court Street, Reno, Nevada. Now, some may also want to assemble and assist in the serving of copies. Certified copies of the judgment are being prepared now for people, and anyone can serve the judgment on any agent who happens to show up for work at either of these 2 locations. The other place where the dungeon is at 911 Parr Boulevard. That's Parr Boulevard, also in Reno. I don't think the 2 buildings are very far apart from one another. And that's the building where they have Roger Hillegas locked up and tortured. And this is at the direction of a man by the name of Darren Balaam, Balaam, and others. And I warn people, this is, wear business attire. Consider the people who work there to be armed and dangerous. You are there merely if you want to assist in handing the paperwork, the copy of the judgment from the Texas court to any of these cabal agents. If you want to be there filming, I expect, that there will be others trying to foment something. I urge you all to take care and go in groups. Be ultra polite to everyone. I would like to point out, too, that a lot of the perpetrators are not necessarily Nevadans. Remember, these are just people. They're just people. They just sold their souls, to the wrong place. Some of the other admitted perpetrators are in Alabama, Virginia, California, and Missouri. Their tentacles reach a lot of different places, thank God. None of them were in Ohio that I know of. But again, those addresses are, their fake tribunal is at 75 Court Street, Reno, Nevada. Their dungeon is at 911 Par Boulevard in Reno, Nevada. And people will be assembling at 10 a.m. Nevada time, Monday, August the 8th, 2023. You can, today is Thursday. By tomorrow or Saturday, I believe that if you go to the website, which is rtcacl.net, you can, RT stands for Republic of Texas. CACL, I'm not sure, .net. You will find, right now you can find the petition, which has been admitted to, but I expect that the judgment itself will be posted within the next 24 to 48 hours. And if you want to, you can just print that out if you want to be one of the ones who hands it to one of the perpetrators or their agents. And you don't have to get anybody to sign for anything. You don't have to endanger yourself in any way. If they throw it on the ground, spit on it, whatever they do, as long as you hand it to them, slide it through the door, under a door, you can serve them that way. And of course, they've been served with 3 notices and a petition already. So this is really a matter of courtesy to let them know that they have this judgment and they have an obligation. The judgment contains an injunction, a mandatory injunction ordering them to release Roger Hillegas. And there's no guarantees. We're dealing with criminals here, admitted criminals who are armed and dangerous. So we'll see what they do. And but this is kind of historic because I don't believe that the people have ever gotten to the point where they can be assertively presenting their rights. Now, there's other things, other steps that can be taken if this does not get their attention, and there are folks that are assembling a common law grand jury. I don't know a lot of the details on that, in which, there can be criminal consequences for these people who are, after all, admitted murderers. But this is just a civil judgment. This is for money and to order them to stop it. So, we're just being assertive and not doing anything unlawful. And just want people to know. And on your way there, please keep in mind, what you've learned and what you can still learn about your rights to be safe on the roadway as you travel there. So I urge people to, travel in groups if you decide to go. And I thank everybody, just think about, would you, are you in the frame of mind that you would want others to be in if it were you locked up in a dungeon, isolated from contact with the outside world, facing death? Would you want others to stand up for you if your position were the same as Roger Hillegas's is? So we want to do unto others as we would have them do unto us. So
that's the law.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you.
Thank you.